Hey everyone, and welcome to the Tom's Hardware podcast for August 11th. I'm Avram Pilch, Tom's Hardware Editor-in-Chief, and I'm joined as always by Ash Puckett, Raspberry Pi expert, and Associate Editor Les Pounder. And we have a couple of very special guests today that are going to show us some really cool things. First of all, we've got Stan Dmitriev from SurrogateTV here. A real honor and privilege. SurrogateTV does some really cool things with Raspberry Pi, and he is going to show us their Oktoberfest pinball machine, which is an unbelievable Raspberry Pi powered pinball machine that people can play online. But before we even get into that, we have Tom's Hardware Assistant Managing Editor Anj Bryant here with her daughters Amber and Camilla. And they are going to show us a new Raspberry Pi project that is designed to help kids of all ages, including adults, learn how to use Raspberry Pi. So, Anj, what have you got to show our audience?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, so we introduced Amber and Camilla. Camilla is 7. How old are you?
7.
And
I'm 12.
Yep. And so, well, let me first show you This is the CrowPi 2 laptop and STEM kit, and we're going to show you a demo of it in a little bit. But it just came at the very right time. I remember asking Avram and Les a while ago that I wanted these girls to have a fun project and learn Raspberry Pi. And here it was. So how was Scratch for you, Camilla?
Fine.
What did you do? Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Yep. So it has a bunch of tutorials for Scratch that is geared toward a younger audience. And okay, do you want to say something? What projects did you? What is your favorite project in Scratch that you did?
I only did one, and I drew pictures of 3 images of phones. One phone, another phone with a message in them, and the third phone with the message opened.
Yep. And did you like it?
Yeah.
What are your other 2 favorites?
I didn't actually really do anything else because after I finished the 3rd drawing, it had a black, like the screen turned black.
Yep. So she was a little discouraged after she had a black screen and it crashed. The Scratch crashed on her, but we were saved by we did the face recognition and voice recognition, which took a little while to work, but those ended up being her favorites. And how about you, Amber?
I worked on most of the Python projects, and they did help me learn a lot more about the Python.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say that I did enjoy a lot of the projects, especially the RGB LEDs and the LCD module.
Yep, that was my favorite. I Les even helped us out with the breadboarding and everything.
Thank you.
So can you show us a little bit of what it looks like, of what the CrowPi 2 looks like? So this isn't out yet, right?
No,
this is on Kickstarter right now.
So on August 15th is the end of the Kickstarter, so it's going to be available right after that. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate. Oops, sorry. We're going to give you a quick demonstration of the. Okay, hold on.
So.
Okay. Okay.
So right now it just looks like a regular laptop, but there's a secret inside, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. So you can actually lift up the keyboard. So it comes with a wireless keyboard and mouse. It kind of sticks sometimes, but it's very convenient. And then this is the heart of the kit where you can see all of the different sensors. The GPIO pins, we have breadboarding, there's an LCD. Amber's favorite was the RGB modules, joystick. I mean, there's just like so many. I mean, we had really so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to, just show a quick demo of one of the modules?
Sure.
Okay. So this is pretty much the dashboard that everybody starts with. And then click on learning.
Mm-hmm.
Clicking on learning and the Python. And these are the different, there are 32 lessons available that are, the Scratch lessons are progressive, but these ones you can pretty much, pick and choose which modules and lessons you want to try. So let's try one and let's quickly. Amber. Okay, so we wanted to try the RFID module.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so pretty much it takes you through all of the steps one by one, and you can either type the codes right here, per step, or you can go to the very end of the lesson and copy and paste the entire thing, just for demonstration purposes. So here we go. So we're going to run the program, and we have pre-programmed this, each card, right? With a
So it's
different
an
song.
RFID.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So
and there's different kinds of music for each number you choose, and the Copai 2 has its select choice or type of music.
Yep. So right now it's telling you that it's waiting for the RFID card. So can you put the first one? Oh. They have very interesting music.
Well, I'm sure they can't exactly get the greatest hits on here.
The other one was Happy Birthday.
There was another one. Can you click? Just show. Just. Okay.
So what you're programming is for it to recognize the RFID with RFID sensor.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that looks really, so how much does this cost? Does the Elecro Copai 2 cost, by the way?
So basically there's three. It's going to be available. It's going to be available in 3 kits. The basic one that doesn't have Raspberry Pi shipped with it is $170 about. It's not the final price for it, but that's what the Kickstarter page says. And then there's a middle tier, which is about $260. It has the Raspberry Pi and a few more modules. And then the advanced kit, which is the most complete kit they have, will run about $330, which pretty much has everything plus more storage. So from 32 gigs to 128. But I mean, it's a lot of fun, and just seeing my kids learn in how to program with Python and Scratch and Raspberry Pi. It was really a treat to see.
Yeah, I think that's great. So we're gonna have up our review of the Copai 2 written by Anj with help from her daughters today. I'm pretty sure, and you'll be able to read that on tomshardware.com. Spoiler alert: we really liked it,
Yeah.
and it's available on Kickstarter now, but it'll probably be more widely available. It's the Elecro Crow Pi 2, made by the Elecro company, which you may have seen some of their other stuff. I know they make a lot of screens for Raspberry Pi and things like that. Oh, somebody asked, can you show us a close up of what all the controls are? I think he means all the sensors.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me just switch cameras again. Okay, here you go.
So I see a fan. I see
Yeah,
GPIO pins.
there's a breadboard, and this is where the GPIO pins go. We switch it off when we're doing breadboarding activities. This one is really fun. We really had a lot of fun with the LCD sensor and the ultrasonic sensor. I mean, there's just like so many things that you could do with this kit. I mean, sorry for the people that are, can't see it and are just listening, but we have like a step motor, buzzer module, vibration module. Oh, Amber also really liked the touch module because she started doing Morse code, and she was like doing all sorts of things.
Another fun project.
Yep.
What I really like about this too, for those who can't see it, is the Raspberry Pi. You can't see it. It's actually below the deck. The keyboard sits on top of the deck of the laptop. You remove the keyboard, and underneath you see all these sensors and lights and motors. And then somewhere underneath that, which you don't see, is where the actual Raspberry Pi 4 lives. And to use all of these different lights and motors, you don't need to keep changing the wiring. It's all continuously wired up, which is really nice, because then you don't have to put on it. I mean, this is probably the equivalent of a whole bunch of different hats and a whole bunch of different wirings.
Definitely it entices. It was definitely great for us, because we would have probably been intimidated to see all wirings everywhere. But for newbies like us, I mean, that was definitely very convenient, and we appreciate Elecro for doing that.
Great. Well, thank you, Anj, Amber, and Camilla. It was great to learn more about the Elecro Crow Pi 2. And those who want to read more about it, just go to tomshardware.com.
Yep, thank you. We're definitely hooked, and we're going to be makers now as well. We're joining the club.
Great, thank you guys. So we have Stan here from SurrogateTV, and Stan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about SurrogateTV?
Sure. I'm one of the people working here at a company called Surrogate.tv. We're a Finnish company, so we're based in Europe. And what we do is we create real-life games. So we create online games where people control real things over the internet, like robots, race cars, claw machines, and also pinball. So one of the latest projects that we just released and announced is an Oktoberfest pinball machine, which we hooked up to the internet using a single Raspberry Pi 4. That was a pretty interesting project. Yeah, that's a short one.
Awesome. So can people play the pinball game right now?
Right now, it's actually in the studio, so nobody can play it right now. But after the show, we're going to put it back online, and people can play it. The game runs 24/7, so the machine is self-operable, and there's nobody in the office when it runs. We have two, actually. We also have a Batman 66 machine that uses the same Raspberry Pi setup.
That's awesome. So can you show us how the pinball machine works?
Sure. I could maybe explain how we actually first made the board and how did we use the Raspberry and what the things we needed. And then we can move on, and I could actually show you the pinball machine itself and the insights. So here's kind of the Raspberry Pi. and a hat connected to it. So we use a Raspberry Pi 4 for this project. And we actually made a custom hat in order to be able to send all the output, 5-volt and 48-volt signals to the pinball machine. And then we also have an input to listen to the ball sensor and to the start button LED on the pinball machine. So this is a custom shield that we made. It also has a fan to cool up the Raspberry Pi. And if you want, you can also power it separately without using the power of the Raspberry Pi itself. We used so then to the Pi, we connect 2 cameras or a camera and a capture card. And that we use to actually show the game, to show the stream to the player. And then we use our custom suite for low latency video streaming and robotics control called SurrogateTV to let players play the game on our website, Surrogate.tv. So then we also have these cables, which actually connect to the Pi. And each of the cable resembles a certain, and on this specific cable set, resembles a certain output that we're sending to the pinball machine, like say left or right flipper, or pressing the start button, or shooting the ball from the pinball machine. And then we simply connect it to the Pi itself. And then on the other side, since we didn't want to solder any cables, we're using this clipping mechanism where you can connect to an existing cable. So the existing cable is still safe and working, but you can clip a new cable to it and also send signals through that as well. So that's kind of a simple setup here from the close-up. Here are the 2 cameras that we're using. In the specific setup of Oktoberfest, we actually ended up going with a bit of a different setup where we have 1 camera for the player to see the game. And then since we were able to capture the screen digitally using a capture card, we went with that instead. But I guess I could maybe show you shortly how the game works, or we can first look into the electronics and how the game.
Oh yeah, we're always about the electronics.
Okay.
I see you have a Logitech webcam there. Have you?
Yeah.
That's like having a gold nugget at this time in history.
You have no idea how hard it was getting cameras a couple of months ago. We actually had to order them directly from China, as it was impossible to get them anywhere else. And also the prices, unfortunately, have increased substantially on the cameras. But yeah, that's one thing we realized that for us, because we first wanted to use the Raspberry Pi, the HQ cameras, which are great, but the current lenses, we make us have to put the camera very far away from the pinball machine, which was not optimal for us. So that's why we went with the Logitech cameras for this setup. But yeah, here they are. But maybe we could show quickly how the game works, if that is okay.
Yeah, of course.
I can just quickly turn it on the website. Start the game and maybe share it with you. It might be a bit loud as the game is right near me, so the microphone might get a bit loud, but let's see. So I'm gonna share the screen.
By the way, everyone is missing, who is listening, is missing this awesome SurrogateTV studio, which is like the coolest looking place I've ever seen. There is a giant TIE fighter, a wall of retro consoles.
All right, so I think the game should be showing now on at least I'm sharing it to the podcast. I'm not sure if you can see it. Let me maybe stop the camera. Nope, that doesn't help. Can you see the screen share by chance, Avram? All right, here we go. So this is the pinball machine right near me, except instead of controlling it physically and playing the flippers, I am pressing the keys on my keyboard. And maybe my colleague can show it also on the camera. But yeah, it's a fully working pinball machine that we connected online. And the secret sauce is, of course, the fact that it's super low latency. So we're talking like sub 200 milliseconds of a delay if you're in the same region like in Europe, which is pretty cool. Yeah, the whole setup is done. The whole code part of the game is done using Python. So all the elements of the game are done using Python. And maybe now that the game is slowly ending and I kind of showed it, maybe we can move back to the camera and I can actually turn it off and show you how it looks inside. So let me stop sharing the screen. Now I'm gonna turn off the game. And then maybe now we should go to the table, and I can shortly show you first how the game looks physically without removing the glass, and then we can remove the glass and maybe tell you more about the setup. Now, the cool part about the whole thing is that we're actually able to run the whole setup on a single Raspberry Pi, and we were really happy when they announced the Raspberry Pi 4, as it allowed us to do a lot of compute on such a small and affordable consumer device. So we are able to combine 2 video streams into one, run all of the game logic, and then send it in a very low latency stream, all using a single Raspberry Pi. So what we have here is we have a capture card, which we are using to capture the screen. So instead of seeing the screen here and having a camera, we just connect directly a digital feed to the Raspberry Pi. And then here we have the main game camera that you just saw on the screen capture, which I use to actually play the game. We then have 2 extra lights, and these lights are used to illuminate the play field, so it's better visible on the game. But now I think we're gonna turn off the pinball machine and show you how does it look inside. So I'm gonna quickly do glass removal, and maybe, there we go. Sometimes it's blocking it. Okay. And then maybe we can remove the glass.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. It looks scary at the first time when you're doing it, but we've been doing it for a while, so it's pretty safe. Don't worry about it. So I'll remove the glass. And then maybe we can lift the machine and show you the insides of the whole thing. So as you can see, the Raspberry Pi is right here. So it's the same Raspberry Pi 4 in a different case right here than I showed you on the camera. But you can see right here. So we have the Ethernet cable connected directly. We didn't want to use Wi-Fi just to cut the latency a little bit and have the connection more stable. And then we have the camera, the Logitech C925E, which we use for this project. And we also have the capture card connected. And then here we have another USB, which is to capturing the audio from the machine. So since the Raspberry Pi doesn't have its own 3.5 millimeter input for the mic, we decided to use just a USB device.
Right.
And then on top, we have the hat. As you can see, there's all the connectors.
Yeah.
So here we have the eight output pins, which we use. One of them, which is, I believe, this one, it goes to the coil. So this is a coil that sends, the balls outside of the game. So when a ball arrives here, it shoots out. And we actually, that's kind of the main reason why we had to do the hat in the first place, because it's very hard to send a 48-volt input signal easily through a Raspberry Pi. So we kind of made a separate hat for that. It doesn't send the, you think we can lift it? There we go. Okay, it holds. All right, there we go. So it doesn't, so the Raspberry Pi shield doesn't keep the 48-volt because it's kind of, then we have to have external power. But what it does is it sends a short input for, I believe, 400 milliseconds to activate the coil and shoot the balls. And then as you can see, I mentioned we have these clips. So these are the clips that we use to actually send the signals through the existing cables of the pinball machine. One interesting part, what we do is we couldn't figure out, so previously we were using image recognition on the previous game, Batman 66, to kind of know when does the game end. But here we found an interesting way that works with most of the pinball machines, where we just listen to this start button. So it has an LED, and basically when the game ends, the LED starts blinking. So we have another cable connected to the LED itself. I believe it's right here. And then we are basically listening when the LED starts blinking, and that's how we know that the game ended, and we kick out a person from the game and kind of add a new person to the game, because it's a queue-based game, as you have a lot of people queuing up at the same time. Then we have 2 cables for the flippers. There's also a mag button cable. We have a start button, so when the game ends, we add a credit to the game, kind of as in any arcade, and then we press the start button. So we simulate like a person would put in a coin and press the start button to start their game. So that's kind of a short overview of how it looks behind the scenes on a Raspberry, on a pinball machine powered by a Raspberry Pi. And you can play this game, Oktoberfest Pinball, on our website, surrogate.tv, completely free, 24/7 after the show when we're going to put the glass back and turn it online.
That's awesome. How did you figure out how to interact with the wiring in that pinball machine?
A lot of testing with a voltmeter. We were actually initially maybe I can actually show on the machine. So when we started making the pinball project, we first thought that for the plunger, we would need to make some solenoid or a motor that takes out the plunger and then shoots it. And then on the buttons, we would need to have solenoids or something that would physically press the buttons. That was our initial idea. But as we started opening the machine and looking into it, it became more obvious that actually all of these signals, especially in the new pinball machines, you can actually just send a signal by sending some voltage. So all the inputs are can be also sent from the pinball computer, kind of. So yeah, a lot of testing. And then figuring out the service credit, to add a credit, was an interesting thing we had to figure out as well. But I guess the trickiest part with this specific setup was figuring out when the game ends, because without knowing when the game ends, how do you end the session and kind of invite a new player to play the game?
Yeah, that is a challenge. So we have a question from Raspi PKR Tutorials. How did you get the voltage from 40 plus down to Raspberry Pi GPIO?
So I can show you the hat. Unfortunately, I might not know the exact terms, but as far as I remember, so from the hat, we have a separate pin that is designed to send 5 amps, 48 volts, if I'm not wrong, but it only sends it for a short time. So there is a MOSFET, I believe, that we also use for protection. So if a board starts sending the signal for too long, the coil will burn. So we made we put a MOSFET that basically, if it stays for more than 400 milliseconds, it turns off itself, and then the temperature goes down. When it recovers, it can be used again. But basically, the way we did it is we had to make our own custom shield for the Pi.
Yeah, so it sounds like really most of the power is not, the Pi is not really supplying the power, it's just sending the signal.
Yeah, so most of them, except for the coil, basically it's simple 5-volt signals that we're sending, except for that one. And then we have the 2 listeners for the LED, and also we have a listener for there's a ball sensor that basically we check if the ball is inside of the ball shooting lane where you start the game. And based on that, we know how many balls the person have had in their game already. So when they had more than 3, we know that their game is about to end. So we connected those 2 sensors.
Was there a reason why you picked this pinball machine?
It was we wanted to go with a more European flavor because we're based in Finland, in Europe. So previously we had the Batman 66 machine, and most of the machines are more themed with like US movies or US comics. So Oktoberfest was a different machine in that sense, and it was also pretty more challenging, I guess, to figure out because we haven't worked with this specific manufacturer before on a project.
Wow, that is so impressive, Stan. That is really, really amazing. How do you get the sort of augmented reality look around the machine? Is that part of your Python script?
Could you elaborate? What do you mean?
Well, when you're showing the demo, you have sort of like a rainbow background or like a colorful background around graphical background around the machine. How did you make that happen?
So this is a well-designed overlay. It's just a picture, but it's well-designed, so it looks pretty immersive. The main goal was to kind of put it in the same way as the camera is positioned. So you kind of have to draw the surrounding the same way as the camera is positioned, under the same angle, sort of. But the cool part, I guess, if you mention about the augmented, is what we were able to do under Raspberry Pi is to take 2 video feeds, which is the feed of the game itself, of the camera, and then of the score screen of which is connected with the capture card, and actually combine them into one, and also compress it and then send it straight from the Raspberry Pi. So doing a lot of compute on such a small and very affordable device was an interesting challenge.
Is it all custom software, or did you use any open source tools to make the combined video feed?
For this stuff, we used our own software, but stay tuned, because we have some announcements coming in the coming months.
Wow, that is awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stan, for joining us and for showing us the amazing Oktoberfest pinball machine from SurrogateTV. There's just so many great things on SurrogateTV. It's just amazing. Well, we really appreciate you joining us, and we really look forward to seeing what's next from SurrogateTV. For all of our listeners and viewers, I really encourage you to check out this pinball machine and some of the other really cool stuff at surrogate.tv.
All right, thank you for having me here,
Thank
Avram. It was a pleasure showing you our latest project.
It's an honor having you. So let's talk about something. Let's talk briefly about something Ash has been working on, and I keep forgetting to mention that if you tweet with the hashtag PICAST, PICAST, you will make the light on Ash's desk flash, and we have no idea when she's going to turn that off. So even if you're listening to this after the fact, you might like wake her up at like 3 a.m. on Saturday if you tweet it. So we were going to ask everyone, just because we have an upcoming story with our list of best Raspberry Pi cases going up shortly, to tweet hashtag PiCast and let us know what your favorite Raspberry Pi case is. Stan has told us that at SurrogateTV they make a lot, they 3D print a lot of their own cases. Obviously, for a lot of people, you're going to be buying off the shelf cases. I'll just show real briefly. We've got a bunch that we've tested recently. Here's one that I think that it will definitely be at or near the top of our list, which is the Argon Neo, which is a really neat $15 case, which has a neat feature where it's got this magnetic cover that pops off, and underneath you can see that you have full access to the GPIO pins, the CSI and DSI ports, and even a little nook here where you can put a camera module. It does passive cooling through the aluminum, or you could put a fan hat on top of it. So I think it's a pretty cool case, the Argon Neo. But we're curious to hear what your favorite cases are. If you tweet to hashtag PiCast. Now, Ash, you were going to show us how you've made this Twitter connected light and how it works.
Yeah. So what I did to set up our light is I used an application called Twython, which allowed me to access the Twitter API and use the data from that in a Python script. But Twython isn't the only tool that does this. You can find other applications. I think one of them is called Tweepy, that will give you access to the Twitter API. So what it's basically doing, the Python script that I have, is it's checking Twitter for any tweets that have the hashtag PiCast. And that can be changed to pretty much any string. It doesn't have to be a hashtag. It could be any string of text. And whenever that text is detected, it triggers the Raspberry Pi to flicker on the LED. So the whole process from tweet to flash takes the longest it's taken for me so far is a full minute, but I've seen it go through as fast as like 20 seconds or so, which is not too bad considering it has to go all the way through, Twitter before it makes its way to the Pi. And in this case, for our setup, I'm using the Pi Top 4 because I just had it handy and it was already set up. So that uses a Raspberry Pi 4, but this could easily work with the Raspberry Pi Zero. You do not need anything powerful to, check for a string of text and flicker an LED. But you can use the data you obtain from Twitter to trigger any kind of script that you want. Just because we're using a light, doesn't mean that you're limited by that. You can make pretty much anything happen whenever a specific hashtag comes through. And I think it's a really, really fun way to integrate your Pi project with social media. Can't hear you, Avram. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, it is neat. One of the things that I just got, and I'm going to be working on as a project, is an LED matrix that I can't even hope to compete with the coolness of Stan's studio that we just saw, but I do want to make my background behind me a little bit less ugly. So I'm going to so I have an LED matrix. I might buy a couple more LED matrices, and I'm going to try and have it do something, maybe based on that hashtag or something else during our show. I'm certainly curious what people's ideas are, what kind of data it could show rather than just flashing. But I'm going to break out all the RGBs, for that. Well, it has been it is very, very cool to see. Before we go, I was just going to ask Les. I know you've been testing a couple of cool things. What can folks look forward to seeing from you on our site this week?
Hello, right. Well, I've been messing around with this little piece of kit. I'm going to get it right up to the screen. And let's hope it's going to focus. No, unfortunately not. Right. It's a Pimmeroni Io Expander. Now, this little board provides analog inputs for the Raspberry Pi, which is something that's been missing since day one. It plugs in straight to GPIO using the 5 pins. It's an I2C device. Or if you've got a breakout garden, which I've got here, which is an add-on board, you can plug it straight in and it works straight away. So I've got more PWM connections. I've got analog connections, and it just gives me a few more pins for the Raspberry Pi. But that's not all I've been playing with. I've also got 2 new cases, which are set to be reviewed very soon. Both are from Acacia. This is the Pi 4 Pro case, which I've got in my hands. A very industrial-looking case. It's very anodized aluminium, quite dark grey. Really heavy weight to it as well. But it's got a nice sort of feature inside. Rather than just a standard little heat pipe that goes straight onto the CPU, we've got this L-shaped piece of aluminium, and it is proper aluminium that goes straight onto the CPU and where the USB-C power port is on the Pi to keep that cool. So I've got that one to look at, but I've got another one from Acacia, which is the Gem Pro. It's slightly larger, but it's also a bit more interesting. Now, is this whiting out? Let's just see if I can help this out a little bit. It is. Oh dear, that's a shame. There we go. Nothing like a challenge, is there? Can you see the pattern on there? Yeah. This apparently will dissipate heat a little better, and it's got the same technology inside as this aluminium block to pull the heat from the CPU and the power connections. So these are going to be on the site for review this week.
Fantastic. So many great cases. We've got a list of our current favorites going up soon, but we're going to keep adding to that over time because there's just so many. I want to thank our special guests, Stan Dmitriev from SurrogateTV, and of course, Anj Bryant, our assistant managing editor. And as always, Les, Ash, and all of you who are listening, watching now or after the fact, you can catch the podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. BST every Tuesday. And of course, watch us archivally after the fact on those same platforms, or listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next week.